It began with a silence so unusual it felt like a whisper from fate itself. In a quiet village nestled in the heartland of Azamgarh, there lived a woman named Kusum, just another face in the crowd, you might think. Yet beneath her modest smile brewed a longing the world around her never cared to notice. That morning, her husband Mukesh had done something unusual, something so rare it sent ripples across the ordinary canvas of her life. He smiled at her. Not just smiled, he winked, whispered something suggestive, and walked away, leaving Kusum's heart blooming with anticipation. It was a gesture so simple, yet to Kusum it felt like the sky itself had opened. She floated through the day like a woman reborn. Her chores, normally burdensome, now felt like rituals of joy. As she swept the courtyard and prepared the evening meal, her thoughts danced around that fleeting moment in the kitchen. For the first time in years, she felt seen, alive. Her neighbor noticed the glow in her eyes and asked what had her so cheerful. Kusum only smiled and brushed it off. Some things are too delicate, too personal to say out loud. She wore her finest red sari, adorned herself with the faintest touch of kajal, and waited. Evening fell, and Mukesh returned from work. The bathwater was warm, his dinner was served with love, and their daughter Diksha clung to his chest as he retreated to the bedroom. Kusum finished the dishes quickly, her heartbeat rising with every step toward that room, that moment, that promise. But what she found behind the curtain of hope was not romance, it was exhaustion. Mukesh, curled beside their daughter, was already asleep. She stood there frozen. Disappointed? Yes. Angry? No. A strange warmth filled her heart. She understood. He must have been tired. It wasn't rejection, just bad timing. She quietly moved Diksha to another bed, then returned and lay beside him, her mind still clinging to the shimmer of hope. The night passed, and though the silence between them deepened, Kusum held on to the memory of that morning's whisper. But dreams deferred begin to rot. Over the following days, Kusum tried again, soft words, gentle touches, small gestures of desire. Each time Mukesh turned away. His words grew cold, indifferent. "I've seen you every day since we married," he said once, eyes barely meeting hers. What had once been affection was now duty. What had once been a bond was now routine. And Kusum, full of warmth, yearning, and need, found herself staring into a void Mukesh no longer cared to fill. Then came the day everything shifted. A man named Kalandar, a younger, unmarried auto driver from a neighboring village, was visiting Mukesh, as he often did. As the two men laughed outside, Kusum stood silently behind a half-closed window, her eyes fixed on the curve of Kalandar's smile, her ears drinking in every word. When Kalandar jokingly said, "Mukesh, you're a lucky man, your wife is stunning," something ignited inside her. Not shame, not fear, but a slow, burning recognition. Someone had noticed her, noticed what Mukesh refused to see. Kusum began to see Kalandar in a new light. Where Mukesh was distant and dismissive, Kalandar was warm, curious, alive. Their glances grew longer. Their exchanges, once playful, turned charged, electric. He began coming around more often. At first, they pretended it was coincidence, but every stolen moment they shared was a rebellion against the world that told Kusum to keep quiet, to be content, to never want more. Then, one day, the inevitable happened. Alone in the house, Kalandar reached for her wrist. She pulled back, only half-heartedly. "This is wrong," she whispered, trembling. "It's sin." But her eyes betrayed her. Her soul, long parched, was ready to drink. Kalandar smiled, certain now. "Just this once, Bobby," he said. "Let me hold you." And she let him. Not because she was weak, but because her waiting had made her desperate. That day, they crossed the threshold of longing into something far darker. After that, boundaries dissolved like sugar in rain. Each day brought another stolen moment, another secret touch. Kalandar, intoxicated by the affair, lavished Kusum with attention, gifts, and passion. And Kusum, who had once pleaded for affection, now bathed in it. Her husband, a mere ghost, drifted through their home unaware, or perhaps unwilling to confront what he sensed. But in the shadows of desire, something vile began to form. Kusum, once content to live her secret, now began to hate Mukesh, not just for ignoring her, but for existing. He had become an obstacle. Her dreams had found a new home, and Mukesh had no place in it. And then the thought came to her, not as horror, but as possibility. What if he disappeared? The line between longing and loathing is thinner than most mortals care to admit. and once crossed, it becomes a noose. Kusum and Kalandar, no longer content with stolen moments, began orchestrating silence, the kind of silence that only death can deliver. Their meetings, once passionate, turned clinical. They were not lovers anymore. They were conspirators. Their plan first took root during a wedding at Kusum's maternal home in February 2020. Amid the music and laughter, Kalandar and his sister Shakuntala slipped away with Kusum. There, in the dying light of celebration, they plotted the murder of Mukesh. But it wasn't just the three of them anymore. To execute their plan, they needed more hands, more silence to purchase. Shakuntala's brothers, Ravindra, Virendra, Dhirendra, and their friend Mithilesh were recruited. Promised to pay out, they pledged loyalty, like jackals lured by the scent of blood. They planned meticulously. The first attempt on the 5th of May failed due to a sudden storm, a divine warning perhaps. But such omens are wasted on those already dead inside. The real attempt came 2 days later. On the 7th of May, Kusum, the architect of her husband's doom, smiled as she handed him a shopping list. "Bring vegetables from the market," she said, her voice as soft as betrayal itself. Mukesh never suspected. Why would he? The trap was disguised as routine. He left that evening, never to return. Near a pond on the outskirts of the village, a tempo waited, its engine cold, its purpose brutal. Inside it sat Kalandar, Shakuntala, and the others. Mukesh was lured into the vehicle with an excuse about attending a function. They drove him out to a secluded area in Chitpur, purchased liquor, and waited for darkness to fall like a curtain on a doomed play. They left their phones behind, except for Kalandar, who clung to his, the string that tied Kusum to her vengeance. Kusum remained at home, pretending to be a worried wife, but her ears were glued to every update from Kalandar. Her thirst wasn't for freedom, it was for confirmation, to hear, to know, to feel, in real time, her husband's death. A grim obsession had taken root. At 8:30 p.m., the tempo stopped near Naripur Bridge. Mukesh, now drunk and sluggish, was dragged out. They wrapped a scarf around his neck and began strangling him. He didn't even fight back. He passed out quickly, and they assumed he was dead. They dumped his body in a nearby thicket. Then Kalandar made the fatal mistake of calling Kusum to tell her it was done. But Kusum wasn't satisfied. "No," she said, her voice sharp with hunger. "Cut his throat. I want to hear it. I want to be sure." Kalandar returned. As he dragged the semi-conscious Mukesh from the bush, the others followed. They pinned him again. Kalandar took out a knife and slashed his throat. The blood soaked the soil. Mukesh cried out, one final scream, and on the other end of the phone, Kusum laughed. Laughed like someone who had finally reclaimed what had been denied for years. The murder was clean, but their cover-up was clumsy. Kalandar took Mukesh's phone, fearing its signal might betray them. He wandered aimlessly with it while Kusum performed the next act of their theater. She began borrowing phones from neighbors, calling Mukesh's number, and acting worried when he answered. Kalandar impersonated Mukesh in a voice low and tired, telling her he'd be home soon. She returned the phones, weeping lightly, crafting the image of a desperate wife. It was all a play, and the village believed it. But cleverness in mortal hands always overreaches. Justice, unlike love, is not blind. It only pretends to be. It watches, collects, calculates. And in the days following Kusum's arrest, Inspector Anil Singh did just that. The village, once content to murmur in gossip and half-truths, now watched with wide eyes as the veil was pulled from a murder that had grown roots in their soil. The investigation moved quickly. Under relentless questioning, Kusum and Kalandar betrayed each other with ease. What bound them in secret passion unraveled under fluorescent lights and interrogation reports. Their own confessions made blame irrelevant. The truth had already soaked the ground in blood. They retrieved the murder weapon, recovered the tempo, extracted phone logs, and found one damning thread, the call made during the murder, with Kalandar's location matching the crime scene. That was the nail in the coffin. When the verdict came, life imprisonment, Kusum showed no emotion. Perhaps prison was less confining than her marriage had been. Kalandar, stripped of bravado, sat in silence. The others followed them into darkness, one by one, swallowed by justice. The village tried to forget, But ghosts linger, especially those born not of violence, but of emotional starvation. Kusum's daughter now lives elsewhere, quieter, lonelier, bearing a surname tied forever to a crime born in whispers. But the story even now refuses to die. So we leave you with this. If love dies silently in a home, does its ghost live on in those we refuse to see? What do you think? Was Kusum a victim first or a villain all along? Let us know in the comments.